I love lazy daisy stitches for flowers and geometric shapes. I've covered regular and tacked lazy daisy in a previous video, so today I'm going to demonstrate a whipped and woven lazy daisy that can be used for flowers or circular shapes. So if we look at this floral piece, this purple and blue flower shows a completed version where the bottom has a texture that looks kind of similar to bullion knots, but the whole thing is whipped and woven lazy daisy with just some straight stitches and French knots added towards the top. So I've drawn that same shape here. And to start, first we're going to make some lazy daisy stitches that go all the way from the bottom of the flower here to the top just under the French knots. So we're going to start right here where this would be the green portion of the stem meets the bottom of the flower. We're going to do this the same as any other lazy daisy. So we come up through your fabric. We're going to go down through the same hole. But we're not going to pull tight. We're going to keep a loop. We're going to come up the end of that edge right where it meets the French knot that will be there. Come up through our loop, pull that fairly tight but not overly tight, and then go back down through the same hole. So this looks quite narrow because it's a long stitch compared to a usual lazy daisy, but it's exactly the same thing. So because there's so many here, I am going to, instead of going one at a time to help with my spacing, I'm going to skip over and do the middle one here and kind of divide it into sections that way. So same thing, up through the bottom, down again, leave a loop. 2, 3, 4, 5. We're going to come up through the end of the middle stitch, come up through your loop, go back down through the same hole, and we're going to do that for each of these. I'm just working to kind of divide the flower in half and in half again to help me evenly space my stitches. Once all of the lazy daisies are done, we're going to start doing the weaving. And I'm going to use an orange here just to make it easier for you to see it against the blue. So we want to come up the left bottom of those stitches. And we're going to be weaving through. You can go with the pointy side of your needle, but I find it really easy to get it caught on the thread or your fabric. So I turn my needle around whenever I'm weaving and use the blunt end. So first, we are going to go under the first lazy daisy stitch, the whole stitch. We went under from the left and around so that we can wrap over it. Our next needle pass, we're going to go under stitch number 1 and stitch number 2. So this way you can see we have wrapped the first one and we're in position to wrap the second. So from wherever you are, you're basically going to go back one and then come under 2 stitches. So now we're going to go under stitch number 2 and stitch number 3. And I'm pulling them a little tight, but not very tight, because we want to be able to scoot them around to the bottom and get nice even rows. So now we're going under stitch 3 and stitch 4. Stitch 4 and stitch 5. And I happen to have 9 here, but the idea applies to anything that you're doing, that you're always trying to wrap around the one that has not yet been covered, but you're going under 2 stitches at a time to get yourself positioned for the next wrap. And then we're gonna, at the end, you just have 1 left to wrap, so we're just going under 1. So you can see where you have those stitches, and right now they're a little wobbly, which is normal, so you can use your finger, the side, or the blunt edge of your needle to just go down and tuck them towards the bottom to make them more of a row to start with. And as you form more rows, that will become easier and easier to do. So that's our first row, and we're basically going to go back and forth, just doing this several times. So you can see that my thread is in position now to loop around the first one, so we're going to go over that first one and under the second one. And then we're going to loop around, come under number 2 and number 3, We could keep going, but hopefully that's enough rows to give you an idea of how that whipping and weaving pattern works. So now what I'm going to do is just take my thread down to the back. We want to be able to pull these apart at the top to create more of this pattern using just small straight stitches. I usually use my needle threader just to kind of pull the needle around and see, pull the threads around and see what I'm doing. So I'm going to come up right at that cross. I'm going to snag the left side of this end stitch, and then I'm going to snag just the right side of the adjacent stitch and come back down in the same hole. I'm going to go and just do a small one on the end as well to hold him in place. So just keep doing that, going across, coming up right at that intersection in the pattern, grabbing the left side of this stitch, and then just the right side of that one. And I just use my needle threader to help me separate and get my needle down at the right point when I'm doing this. Okay, once you've got those in place, you can adjust them a tiny bit. And then it's time to just add the French knots here at the end of each piece. And these are just a typical 2-wrap French knot, nothing fancy. And so that is an approximation of this style of flower. And that's it for whipped and woven lazy daisy flowers. Thanks for watching.